Central Bank of Nigeria, Tokunbo Martins, talking about the sinking fund. Now, let's get a clear idea of what the sinking fund is all about before we begin to understand why the banks have to contribute 0.5% of their total assets to that fund. So what is the sinking fund?
Thank you very much. A sinking fund, as the name implies, is a fund that is specially created for a particular purpose. In this instance, it is being provided for the there are situations within the banking system that have happened in the past. It's like when you have a sinking fund, you have some money set aside for a special purpose. This time around is a sinking fund because you contribute it there and then it is reinvested at a particular, maybe minimal interest rate, and all of that, so that at the end of the day, when you run into trouble, it's like providing for the rainy day, for the banks. In terms of, okay, what has happened in the past has taught us some lessons. So let's begin to do it now when the problems have not arisen, because it has been argued in the past that distress situations may happen. It is in the nature of the behavior of financial people that they will misbehave at one point or the other. The most important thing is that you provide safeguard. So sinking fund is in form of a safeguard. You take out of your current earnings, current income or current asset, and you keep it somewhere. Because when you keep it somewhere, so that when you run into trouble, all of us cannot run into trouble at the same time. It's a kind of insurance for the banking system to protect them against the likelihood of a distress. And don't forget that when AMCON came on board, one of the things that they tried to do was that, okay, fine, there was problem, we had to buy some of these debts and all of that. But as we are doing that, we are going to issue bonds for you. Those bonds were based on a kind of valuation of the quantum of debts that are in the portfolio of each of the banks. And that's what people are saying about, okay, maybe Nigerian money has been spent, taxpayers' money has been spent to bail out banks and all of that. One of the beautiful things that they did was that at that time, they also came up with this sinking fund idea that, look, this sinking fund has to come up. Let it come up so that you have a fund, a kind of a balance
from their own. That's from the banks,
the banks themselves. And then when you have a problem, it is not when we start running around. From that fund, we can settle some of these problems without causing what I call systemic distress.
But would it cause any distress for the banks? Because they're taking about 0.5% of their total assets to fund the sinking fund, as also as a support to AMCON, to make sure that when eventually there is a crisis, we'll be able to shock it. Now, wouldn't this cause problems, namely for the banks in terms of their income, their interest income, and probably how they will be relating in terms of how they will be giving credit to customers?
I think another, I will address that issue, but I need to quickly point out about the problem of governance within the banking system. And when I talk about governance, I'm talking about the corporate governance issues, about most of the things that cause distress within the banking system, as we have found out, are not the retail credits that have been advanced. It is due to the misbehavior of people that have been put in charge of shareholder funds. I'm talking about the board and top management. And these have been born out of a series of studies, even in other countries of the world. So what we need to do is more regulation in respect of that. But talking about causing distress for them, look at the quantum. Is 0.5% of assets. Is 0.5% of 33% of balance sheet items. When you look at those figures for each of the banks, and I think they will need to provide for it over time. For instance, it's not something that, okay, you're going to pay at a go. Yeah. Maybe over a period of time, you make provision for it, and at the time you have enough quantum, you credit the emergency fund. And I think there's a trust deed to make sure that the amount that is kept inside that sinking fund is properly managed.
Also, the central bank is also contributing as well. About 50
billion. And you find out that the central bank is not saying we leave you alone to do it. So we are looking at a situation where central bank is very good when it comes to financial stability issues, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. But what we are trying to, I have always been an advocate of a more activist central banking, in the sense that I want to ensure that economic growth as part of your mandate in terms of increase in output that will close the gap that has created unemployment. It has always been a position that we economic development professionals are very passionate about, and that is to say that the central bank is not enough for you to say you are targeting inflation. I think it's one of the participants at the bankers committee meeting yesterday was saying something about, okay, right now what we are trying to do is so that there is no excess liquidity, because there is this issue of CRR of government funds, which we will get to that later. The most important thing is that when you have excess liquidity, where is that excess liquidity? This is, in the last 3 months, Nigerians have been complaining. Budget implementation has suddenly improved. And then we have a lot of economic activities. Why is it that our liquidity situation is always out of sync with the level of activity? Because that's when you talk about excess liquidity. When you talk about the monetary supply within the economy. If you have a situation where the monetary supply and the output in terms of production, the reproduction within the economy are moving in tandem
with the numbers,
then you don't have liquidity problem. What do we do to ensure that monetary authorities and the fiscal authorities, talking about the Ministry of Finance, budget and all that, must coordinate their activities? Because whatever we are doing, we must have a main objective, and that is increase output and make sure that unemployment is reduced. And if that, because one of the things that will happen naturally now is that interest rates will go up. The quantum of money that they are taking out of the banking system now, the public sector funds, 50% of them are going to be taken out, I think about 1 trillion. And then right now, if you continue that over time, what will happen is that banks will start looking for a way to block that. And within that period, deposit rate goes up, interest rate also, on credit goes up. But I can tell you something for free here, that decision, it is tough, but it is good for the banking system. Because either two, the retail, the man described by the managing director of, is it Zenith?
Yes.
Yeah.
The group
putting
director.
his money under the pillow and all that. It's not, the bankers in this country are not bothered about such people. The bankers are more bothered about the government funds. They are always found in the ministries of finance. Head of parastatals are their main customers and all of that. And that's not good for the economy. The economy will only grow when ordinary people, retail banking, assumes an upward swing within the economy. Because that's when we say we are overbanked, are we underbanked? How many people in this country take their money to the bank? In the north, most of the people keep their money under the pillows. In parts of the southwest, they don't even have the banks. So now the banks will do more customer service. They will take every individual that comes into the banking hall as being a serious person, because there is no public sector representative that is going to bring billions from Abuja or from Lagos, Alausa, or from Abeokuta. Well, they will now have to fight for every dime.
Well, they have actually said that they're going to fight for every dime that they get. Like the group managing director of Zenith Bank actually said that. But let's take a quick break, caller, and we'll come back. We're still talking about the banking sector, latest developments in the sector, and how this has affected liquidity in the system, credit, access to credit by customers, and how the Central Bank of Nigeria's moves has been able to sanitize the banking sector so far. At least we have been reviewing the last 2 quarters of the year. Business Morning continues in just a moment.